Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of 裏技英語. My name is BJ Fox and I'm on Zoom. We're on Zoom today and I'm with my co-host, Ishii Terumi.
どうも、石井てるみです。裏技英語、今週も始めていきたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。
Yeah. How are you, Terumi?
Very, very good.
Good.
How are you, BJ?
I'm good actually. All going well.
Ooh,
And I'm looking
all going well.
Yeah.
Looking for what?
I'm looking forward to this episode.
Looking forward to this episode. What kind of episode?
Well, it's an episode focused on me. It's looking at a phrase I often say.
BJ がよく言うフレーズにフォーカスした、
Yeah.
BJ の口癖エピソードということですか？
Yeah, and it's a phrase...
Bloody hell とかですか？
Bloody nightmare episode.
Bloody nightmare. Sorry to being a bitch ですか？
Sorry to be a
Sorry to be a...
Yeah, but it's a phrase I don't actually realize I say. But when I listen back to the episodes to check them, I notice I do say it a lot.
自分では結構言ってたとは気づかなかったけれども、このポッドキャストを振り返った時に、あれ結構言ってんじゃん、気づかないで使ってたな、そんなフレーズがあるわけね。When did you use it?
Well, that is what is interesting. I use this phrase when I'm not very confident in my answer.
BJ がコンフィデントでない時なんかありましたっけ？コンフィデントじゃない、自信があんまないなんて時に使っている言い回しだと。
Often when you ask me a question about something specific in English, like grammar.
英語の文法で、これは文法的にはどういうことになってんの？ほら、私がね、文法からきちきちと英語をやったタイプだから、たまにこれどういう文法構造なのか、っていう質問をね、BJ にするんだけれども、So in those cases, you often say you're not an expert on grammar.
Yeah.
Just an English native speaker.
Just a simple native speaker. And when I give the answer, I never say definitely this is the answer.
これが答えですとは言わない。
Yeah. I don't really say I think this is the answer.
I think this is the answer. これが答えだと思います。これが答えだと思うんだけど、とも言わない。
Yeah.
Then what would you say?
I say, I would argue that.
I would argue that. Would you argue that? と
Yeah.
どういう意味？ I would argue っていうのは。
Well, that's the phrase we're going to talk about on today's episode of 裏技英語. I would argue that.
I would argue that.
So straight off, let's look at the word argue.
argue とかね、アーギュメントとか言いますけれども、argue ってその反対するとか異議を唱える。
Yeah, I think even to native English speakers, the initial image of this word is like a verbal fight, an argument, a quarrel.
quarrel 口論とかね、口喧嘩
Yeah.
とかなんか say their parents are arguing all the time とか
Yeah, good example. Yeah, my parents are arguing all the time. And the verb is to argue. The noun is argument, to have an argument. But it does actually have another meaning to argue.
口喧嘩しているなんて時にぴったりですけれども、動詞が argue で名詞が argument、口論する、言い争うっていうイメージですけれども、他にも意味があるんでしたっけ？
Yeah, and it's to give reasons to try to persuade.
To give reasons to try to persuade 説得するために、その根拠となる理由を示す。
Yeah.
説得する、議論するとか、そういう意味ね。
Yeah, like when a lawyer is in court and is giving evidence to the judge, they are making arguments.
弁護士が法廷で証拠を見せているとき、そういったときは making arguments、議論する。弁護士がそういう法廷でこの自分の主張をしているとき、
Yeah, that's making an argument.
making an argument っていうんだ。主張する、議論する。そういったことでいいでしょうかね。訳としてはね。
So when I say I would argue that, I am not having an argument. I'm of course meaning this version. I am giving reasons.
I would argue that この場合はもちろん反対意見を言うとかそっちの意味ではなくて、後半に今言いました議論する 説得する。そっちの意味なのね。
Yeah.
で、I would argue that. なんか主張するとすれば、
Yeah.
議論するならば、
Yeah.
まあ、無理やり訳すとそういうこと？
Yeah. Well, actually, I would argue that this phrase is possibly a good translation of あえて言えば。
あえて言えば、今 I would argue that と言いましたね。
Yeah.
あえて言うならば、このフレーズの訳は、あえて言うならばだと思います。あえて言うならばだと思います。
Yeah.
ってことね。
If I had to say, if I had to argue, I would argue that.
If I had to argue, I would argue that. ややこしくなってきました。
Yeah.
If I had to say.
Yeah.
そんな言い方はある？
If I had to give an opinion, if I had to say.
If I had to say.
Yeah.
そういう前置きの言い方はある。なんか、あえて言うならばって時に、if I had to say.
Well,
それも
if I had to give an opinion, or if I had to say, yeah, you could say that.
まあまあ、
Yeah.
そんな言い方もあるけれども、if I had to argue. まあ、議論するならば、I would argue that. なんか、I would argue that. あえて言うならばとか、なんとかとも言える？
Yeah.
なんとかとも言うことができるでしょうとか、そんな役になるんですかね。
Yeah. So, tell me, let's look at the urawaza aspect of this phrase.
今度はこの I would argue that の裏技的な側面を見ていきましょう。
When you say I would argue that, you are not taking full responsibility for the statement. You're putting some distance between you and your thoughts.
I would argue that から発言を始めるときは、その後自分が言うことに対して完全な責任は取りませんよと。ちょっと自分が今から言うその考えとはちょっと距離を置いてる感じ？
Yeah.
なんか日本語で言う知らんけどみたいな感じだよね。
知らんけど。
なんかこれなんか関西弁、これね誰が言い始めた言葉かはよくわからないんだけれども、誰々何々だと思うんですよね。知らんけどって言ってなんか冗談っぽく
知らんけど。Okay.
知らんけどって知らないよ。I don't take the responsibility. 知らんけど、
Yeah.
みたいなね、ちょっと冗談っぽく言うんだけれども。
Yeah. It's not quite as hard as that. It's more formal than that. But you are using it. I use it about grammar because I don't know if I'm correct.
文法に関しては BJ は、まあ、100% 正しい自信がないので I would argue that.
Yeah.
なんとかこうだと思うけど知らんけどみたいな。ちょっと勝手に知らんけどっていう役にしちゃってるけど、まあ、あえて言うならこうだと思う。
Yeah.
なんと、そんな感じで、ちょっと自信が 100% ない時に使うわけですね。
Yeah. I think I used it in the episode when we discussed the Queen. I think I said, and I would argue that many of my generation aren't interested in the monarchy or something.
前回のエピソードで若い世代が君主制モナーキーにそんなに興味がないんじゃないか。あえて言うならば。
Yeah.
もちろんね、その全員が何て思ってるか 100% は言い切れないので断言したくないからこれを使ったと。
Yeah. Exactly. And like I could say, well, I'm not 100% sure of that or something like that. But it sounds more persuasive if you come in with a positive statement.
I would argue that から始める代わりに I'm not 100% sure から始めることも、まあ、できなくはないんだけれども、まあ、I would argue that という言い方の方がポジティブ？
Yeah. Well, also, even though I'm not 100% sure, I am quite sure. I think I'm correct.
なるほど。
Maybe not 100%, but I think I'm correct. So I don't want to start the sentence with a negative.
まあそうね、100% 正しいとは言い切れないけど、まあ多分正しいという時にはね、I'm not 100% sure っていうのはまあネガティブなね、not が入ってるしネガティブな感じで始まっちゃうので、まあ、その言葉を使うのであれば I would argue that
Yeah.
から始める方がポジティブなニュアンスになるということですね。
Imagine your boss put you on the spot and asked you about the potential of a new marketing campaign.
上司が急に新しいマーケティングキャンペーンのことについて質問してきました。
You can't say, I'm not sure 100%, but I think it will work. That will not give the boss confidence. So instead, you could say something like, I would argue it is a great opportunity with lots of potential.
上司に聞かれた時に I'm not 100% sure, but I think it will work out. これだとね、I'm not sure っていうちょっとネガティブな言葉から始まっちゃって、あれ、この人自信あんのかな、大丈夫かなってなってしまうんだけれども、その代わりに I would argue that から始めれば、もちろん 100% のね、絶対大丈夫ですとまでは言えないんだけれども、かなりポジティブな印象を残すことができるということですね。
Yeah, you're not committing 100%, but you're getting there. Actually, telling me, this feels to me like a ura brother, or maybe an ura cousin to playing devil's advocate.
裏カズンって何？裏ブラザー、裏技の兄弟。裏技のいとこね、裏カズンね。
Yeah.
Playing devil's advocate。反対意見を言うときにね、前置きとして使うといいですよっていうので何度も紹介してきましたけれども。なるほど。
Yeah, because there you're putting like distance between the opinion and you.
playing devil's advocate っていうのは、意見をしたいんだけれども、ちょっとその意見と自分に距離を置きたいときに使う、そんなフレーズでしたけれども。
Yeah. And actually you can use this phrase in a similar way to playing devil's advocate. Maybe when you want to take a little bit more responsibility for the criticism.
playing devil's advocate と似たような状況で使うことができる。もうちょっとその playing devil's advocate っていうのは本当に誰々がこう言ったらどうするんですかぐらいな。自分はそう思ってないけど、でちょっと距離はかなり空いてましたけれども、もうちょっと自分がその批判とか意見にもうちょっと責任を持ってもいい。そんな時に使えると。
Yeah, like just saying that's a bad idea, that's very direct. Playing devil's advocate, the customer might not like that idea, that's very indirect. In the middle, you could say, I would argue it's not the best idea.
That's a bad idea. それ全然良くないって言ってしまうのは一番ダイレクトですよね。で、次に playing devil's advocate. The customer may not like that idea. はい、これは消費者はそれをいいと思わないかもしれないですよっていう言い方なので、完全に自分とは距離を置いている、間接的に批判している言い方ですけれども、I would argue that it's not the best idea. あえて言うならば、あまりいい意見じゃないかもしれないですね。あまりいいアイディアじゃないかもしれないですね。これはその中間ぐらいだと、いうことね。
So it's a good phrase to learn and one to practice. Are you ready to practice, telling me?
I would argue that I am ready to practice.
Excellent. Thank you very much for listening to Urawaza Eigo. I know a lot of you already listened to 外資系裏技英語基本のキー, but did you know there is a special bonus module on Amazon Music?
裏技英語をお聞きの皆さん、どうもありがとうございます。スピンオフポッドキャスト外資系裏技英語基本のキーが爆誕したというのはね、すでにお伝えしているところなんですけれども、その中でもボーナスモジュールというのがございまして、
And it's all about job hunting. How to find your dream job in a 外資系。
はい、ジョブハンティング、仕事探し、面接で使える裏技フレーズですとか CV をどうしたらいいのか、そういったことをお話ししているボーナスモジュールとなっています。
And it includes possibly our greatest interview yet with a member of Amazon Japan's recruitment team.
なんと Amazon Japan リクルートメントチームの方にもインタビューした内容をお届けしています。
So click the link in the episode description and head over to Amazon Music right now.
Amazon Music 限定コンテンツとなっていますので、ぜひ Amazon Music からチェックしてください。もしくは私たちのポッドキャスト裏技英語ディスクリプションのところにリンクを貼っておきますので、そこから飛んでいってくださいね。
Actually, telling me, I think this is a very good phrase for you to learn.
これすごい あれだよね。急に出てきても私も聞いたことないし、めちゃくちゃこなれた英語な印象なんだけれども。Why do you think this is a good phrase for me to learn?
Because I think you have a bad habit sometimes of always trying to be balanced, never saying anything negative.
私がちょっとあまりネガティブなことを言わないと。
Yeah.
日和見っぽいってこと？
Say that word again. 日和
見？なんかだからあまり なんて言えばいいんだろうな。いい子ちゃんなことを言おうとする。なんかね、ラジオのディレクターとかにも言われるんだよ、それ。
So it's like,
結局は、
yeah, like you always say, like when I criticized Gonpachi once, you were like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, Gonpachi might not be the best restaurant for BJ, but many people do like it and it's a great restaurant, I think. I've never been there, but blah, 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 blah.
なんかそうね、あんまりその飲食店に対してあそこ最悪とかあんま思わないんだよね、私ね。
Yeah. But other things as well, you always try to take this very balanced, you know, you feel,
Always?
Yeah, I feel like you always say, and some people might have different opinions. Some people might have different opinions.
そうなんていうのね、フェンス sitting. Sit on the fence.
Sit on the fence, yeah.
いや、でもね、違うんだよ。私ね、嫌だとか嫌いなものはちゃんとあるし、その時は言うんだよ。
Yeah. But on radio, on our podcast, you're very balanced.
そうね。ポッドキャストもそうだし、今他の仕事でやってるラジオでもね、結構その尖った意見を言わない、
Yeah.
ネガティブなことも言わない、あんま愚痴とか文句とかそういうことを言わなすぎてつまらないって言われることはあるから、最近はちょっと言うようにしてんだけどね。
Oh, really? Okay.
まあその自分の中で OK なラインまでで
Well, what's
気をつけてるけど。
good about this phrase is when you say I would argue, it's making it very clear from the start it's your opinion. You know, other people might have different views. So it captures all that things you say, like some people have different opinions, it captures it in a very concise way.
他の人はまあ別の意見があるかもしれないけども、これあくまで私の意見だ。そんな印象になるんだ。
Yeah. So
I would argue that.
I would argue
This is
that.
my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think for you, it's a good one. Okay.
私が使うベーシーな、はい、そんなフレーズなのね。了解です。
Practice
はい
time. Tenemi. Question.
はい。
I want a togata iken. Okay. I want to know who is the best Beatle.
Who is the best Beatle?
Yeah.
これでね、私があれでしょ、どうせそれぞれに役割があるとかさ、
Yeah.
All of them are the best Beatles とかっていう意見が
Not
嫌なんでし
today.
ょ
Yeah, not today.
そういうのがなんかつまんないわけね。Okay, I would argue that. Oh, this is such a difficult question.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks for asking. That's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. I've never thought about that. I would argue that Paul McCartney is the best Beatle.
And can we ask why? Because?
Because? Because? だってあえて言ったからさ、別に本当にはそう思ってないんだもん。ちょっと待って。Because he is such he creates a lot of music.
Yeah. Okay. I would argue that Paul McCartney was the greatest Beatle because he had the most songwriting credits and many of their best hits came from him, such as Let It Be, Get Back. I can't think of any others off my head. Okay.
他にもいっぱいあるんですけどね。
Yeah, Ruben. Okay, Ruben's going to come in. Who would you argue before Ruben? Go.
Well, no, I want to say I would argue that, yes, I agree, Paul wrote so many good songs.
Yep.
But also he wrote probably the worst song ever.
The frog song.
The Christmas song.
What's the Christmas song?
Simply having wonderful Christmas time.
Yeah.
That's a good song.
That's a good song.
So I would argue that's one of the worst
Why?
songs.
Why?
So
Why?
I can't. It's so annoying.
In what way?
Annoying. Yeah.
How annoying?
He says the same words about 40 times in 3 minutes.
So producer Ruben would argue that Paul McCartney is not the greatest Beatle because of the Christmas song. I thought you were going to say the frog song.
何フロッグソングって。
Bum, 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 bum.
I mean, that's better than that Christmas song.
Okay, let's make it easier for Telemi. Let's make it easy for Telemi. That was too hard. That was too hard.
Yesterday もあったね。
That's a good song, though. Yesterday.
Yeah, that is an excellent song. Amazing song.
Okay, next question. Who is the worst Beatle? We all know. No need to answer. Okay, goes without saying.
私何も言ってないよ。
Okay. Tell me another question then. Another practice.
はい。
Which is better, stand-up comedy or manzai?
それは Which do you like? Your mother or your father? みたいな質問ですよ。
But you
比
have
べるも
to.
のじゃないっていうのがダメなんでしょ？私のその無難な答えがダメなんでしょ？ Okay. I would argue that in Japan, manzai is better
Okay.
because it is very, very popular,
Yeah.
not only among comedians, but also it is popular nationwide.
Great argument. Great argument. I would argue that stand-up comedy is better. I think it has less rules, so it has more freedom of expression, and you can grow more.
Excellent.
It is fine when you ask for an opinion and you don't really, maybe you don't even believe it 100%, because deep down I don't really believe stand-up comedy is better than manzai. I don't really believe you can compare them. They're different.
Yeah, they are different.
But if you ask a question and you need to give an opinion, this is a great way to package it in a safe way.
ああ、なるほどね。あえて言うならばっていう日本語訳。私どうしてもね、英語ってのは日本語訳から今も考えちゃう癖があって、なんとなく日本語で言うとこれは何に当てはまるんだろうって考えちゃうんだけれども、I would argue that っていうのがね、まだその感覚として腑に落ちてないんだけども、あえて言うならばっていうのがやっぱり近いのかな。
That's what I thought, yeah.
100% 自分がすごい強く思ってるわけじゃないけど、あえて言わなきゃいけないならば、ビートルズの中でのメンバー誰が一番だっていう無茶苦茶な質問が来た時に、あえて言うならば誰々かな。はい、なんかしっくりきた。それだったら。I would argue that.
One final urawaza aspect to this phrase is I actually use this phrase in another way too. Tell me. How?
How? I would argue that. どんな状況で使うの？ How?
Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, this is often how I use it, okay? And imagine you've just asked me a question about grammar. Okay. I would go, okay, I would argue that it's an adjective or something.
I would argue that. 考えてたね、今ね。I would argue that って言いながら。
Yeah.
だからゆっくり言って、その間に考えをまとめたい。
Exactly. I am literally formulating my thoughts in that moment.
はい、今の間で考えをまとめてた。じゃあ、That's a good question. Thanks for asking. と通じる部分もある？
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We say one of the good things about that's a great question. Thanks for asking. It gives you a few seconds to think. But even more so in this example, I'm literally thinking at the moment, okay, I would argue that Paul McCartney, coming up with arguments in my head.
なるほど。ね、Thanks for asking とか That's a great question は、考えてるのが、ね、バレちゃいけないですけれども、この場合は BJ はね、I would argue that 強いて言うならば、あえて言うならばもいいけど、強いて言うならばもいいね。強いて言うならば、あえて言うならばっていう感じで考えをまとめる時間として使えるわけだ。しかもその考えてるのがもう相手にバレてても大丈夫なのね。
Some questions are easy, some are hard. Sometimes you do need time to think. And this is a better way than just saying, it's a little bit better.
すぐに答えられる質問ばかりではないですからね。そういった質問が来た時に、ってただ言うよりも、I would argue that ってなんか言ってる方がなんか様になりますね。
Yeah, and it's better than, it's fine to take time, fine to have a long pause. But if you just paused without the phrase, it might not be so good. So use this phrase, learn this phrase. It's an excellent phrase to use.
はい。っていうよりは、I would argue that っていう方が格好がつくので、いざという時に。でもこのフレーズがね、馴染んでないと考えてる時にもスッと出ない。 だから別のこと考えてる間に出てくるフレーズだから、もうそれだけ身に染みてないといけないということなので、ちょっとね、ぜひ、皆さんも私もこのフレーズをしっかりと身につけておきましょう。
Yeah, why don't you practice? This is a good way to practice. Because what you could do is you could create arguments for each member of the Beatles. I would argue that Paul. I would argue with John. You could actually form and just practice. Like, do it with AKB48. I would argue that this is the best person.
48人。
Yeah, Sayaka-chan. I would argue that Naomi-chan. I would argue that... Sorry, I don't know any of these names. I'm making these up.
さやかさんはいるけど、まあいいや。
Oh, really? Okay.
まあでもそうやって練習をすればいいわけね。あえて言うならばっていうのでね。I would argue, Ringo とかね。I would argue George.
Hey, don't. Did you just answer who's the worst member of the Beatles?
何も言ってないですよ。そういうあれじゃないですからね。I would argue 名詞が来るとき I would argue 誰?that はいらないね。I would argue.
I would argue. Oh yeah, if it was just a one-word answer. Yeah,
I would argue that.
But I think try to practice. I would argue that sentence because I would argue that it's Paul because he wrote "Let It Be."
Yeah, I would argue that it is John Lennon because he was a genius.
Exactly. I think this is a great phrase telling me it's got a number of different urawaza applications.
I would argue that これは裏技としても使えますし、ぜひ覚えておきたいフレーズですね。これでも知らなかったら I would argue that なんか議論をしたいのかななんて思っちゃってたかもしれない。
Yeah.
そんな深い意味はないんだよね。
No. Yeah.
Okay.
If anything, it's the opposite. It's because if you said I want to argue my point, it would mean that you really believe in it deeply. But here you're using it to give opinions that you're not confident in.
そうよね。I would argue that ってのは、むしろ議論したいとかじゃなくて、ちょっと距離を置きたいときに使うということで、
Yeah.
その深い意味というか重い意味はないということもね、ぜひ覚えておきたいですね。
And also use it to buy time. Use it to collect your thoughts.
はい、時間稼ぎ、そして思考整理なんて答えるかを頭の中で考えるときにもぜひこれ使えます。
And on that note, we would like to end today's episode of Urawaza Eigo. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you again either here next week for another episode or on Amazon Music for 外資系裏技英語基本のKEY。
はい、ということで裏技英語 I would argue that ぜひね皆さん覚えておきましょう。また次回のこのポッドキャスト裏技英語もしくは Amazon Music でリリースしてます外資系裏技英語基本のキーでお会いしましょう。それまで皆さんお元気でバイバイ。
バイ。
裏技英語 Business English is so hard 裏技英語 I need a 裏技
外資系裏技英語お楽しみいただけましたらぜひ Apple のポッドキャストアプリで星5つの評価をタップしていただけると嬉しいです。ほんの数秒でできます。番組のランキングアップにもつながるんです。私たちのストレッチゴールは1000レビュー。どうかご協力よろしくお願いいたします。